Okay.
Warming up to test it's running.
Okay, good.
As always, if you are watching this in the future, know this is a recorded live stream, so the official still will start the official. This is recorded live, so there are no cuts, no edits, and a lot of bloopers. But welcome to our show.
No mirror tricks. No things. Yeah, so give us a bit as we wait for folks to join the stream. We will be spending the next few minutes resharing the fact that we are live. And, hopefully getting more friends on board.
YouTube is running. Facebook reshare is running. I already approved the share, but it's not appearing in my feed. Feed.
You're trying to say feed like cheese? Like a Wallace and Gromit cheese? I mean, I love you for these things, but I was right, huh? Laughing is just is evidence that I was right. Tweeting link to the stream.
Okay, I see it. And then now resharing it to our friendly mailing list.
Which hides amidst your board game chats.
I don't understand that the algorithm is not figured out that I do this practically every day.
And there's no motivation for them to make that efficient so that other people to chat.
I guess
It's all a lie. Mhm, mhm, mhm.
hmm, that's tough watcher.
I think I stopped following that because of surprise moments like that.
Yeah, I'm because it's still an office account. I mean, not an office account, but you do still sometimes check for office related stuff.
Exactly. Well, I check a lot more.
So
We'll do for folks to join. Hang in there, folks, in a bit. And then we'll talk about today's Tasty Tuesday topic. Yep. This is a live stream discussion thing, kind of a podcast, kind of a vlog, just kind of a live video, all these things. But, patience, hang in there, and feel free to join the discussion. Or if you are watching the recording, listen to us try to fill dead air before the show starts formally. Oh, the joy of live streams.
well, we could
Maybe
because we did tackle food on commonly relatable things, but
I think we're just running out of food.
and I think you know people just really are finding different distractions.
Yeah.
So we might as well just focus on stuff we really want to talk about.
Mm-mm. Maybe that's not bad. It's like especially when you're going these letter challenges for yourself, then you have quite the. Uh,
How about fandom stuff? We can still like go super micro level. New Mutant just about Ilyana, and then
Mhm.
another episode all about Sunspot,
That's true.
and so on and so forth. All right, I think we should start.
Oh yeah.
We will be right back after this.
Oh yeah! Really great!
This is first time here. Welcome to Baduy Pride. About anything we want.
It's completely unscripted, not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us as we talk about everything.
For joining us again. There's a few friends who've joined us live.
Thanks for saying hello, Mark.
And for those who are new to the stream, if you are there, we can't see you if you're there, but please comment and we'll incorporate your comment. So today is a food topic because we try to do food topics every Tuesdays.
Yes.
And since M is the letter of the week,
Okay, but then Toby decided to run with it because last week was N, and that was also random because I just started with let's talk about Hiroshima hacks.
Mhm.
So then I don't know, we're
N,
doing
now it's M.
M this week. So yeah, today's all about meat. non Such a non-specific topic. So I don't think you guys contribute. We may not go very deep, but at the very least we'll
We now
Mark is
have letter
surprised.
sponsors.
Hey,
I wish we had letter
it worked for
sponsors.
us.
Maybe we should have puppets.
You already have a puppet. You have a shark.
Oh,
You have
yeah, yeah.
oh.
Me.
Actually it's episode. And Kenny's on YouTube. Hey Kenny, thanks for joining.
So meat, by definition, is animal flesh that is eaten. What many overlook is that we're so used to seeing meat as beef and pork that
Mm-hmm.
some forget poultry is still part of it.
And fish. It's pretty much animals. Wow.
Yes.
I guess the red meat industry doesn't like you ignoring them. All right. So
And that's the thing about it. With the advent of civilization being more domesticated, we ways to make sure that we could have meat and this ranges from cattle to other parts of the world having non-cattle.
okay. And I feel like we talked about
We
some
talked
weird
about
thing,
this in
weird food or
yeah,
something.
we talked about this in some other episodes. Um, but when we talk about meat, we cannot ignore the fact that for other places in the work and beef, there are rabbits, dogs, horses, and it's a very very wild world out there.
Yes. And it's
Mark
exactly.
shared.
Yeah, and
That's
then
where we talked about
and
it.
it's just funny that was this to some degree, yeah, it's like a lot of cultural things that sort of like what we thought. A lot of cultural can and can't eat have determined what is sort of normalized or not. So there are
Mhm.
certain meats that are not cultural influences you can't eat, that there is no health history tied to it. So
Mhm.
now following the current standards of when you can or cannot sell food. And so it's like when you're living in America and you easily get your hands on blood. So it's a thing. Hello.
So, composed of water, protein, and fat. It is edible raw, but is normally eaten after it has been cooked and seasoned or processed. Processed meat will spoil or rot within hours or days as a result of infection with decomposition. As a result of infection with and decomposition by bacteria and fungi.
Yes.
So, um, one thing I was wondering about was there's the poultry industry, and of
Okay.
course how raw chicken is always seen as bad because of salmonella.
Yes, the risks of salmonella and those kind of food things.
And
So now you're
I was wondering if that's a modern result of how chickens are pumped in with all these
or the fact
preservatives
that their
or they're
living
enclosed,
conditions,
yeah,
so they're so
and
quick to cross contaminate one
and was
another.
salmonella not really a problem before when they were still free range? I was wondering about that.
Okay. Mark shares the invention of fire and cooking also led to increased meat consumption, if I remember right, because most meat are not easy to digest raw. Yeah, so
Mm.
cooking as a process actually aids digestion because it already partially like breaks down the absorbed nutrients, and that's why uh, the discovery of fire and the innovation of cooking
Hey, Mitch.
revolutionized our ability to and thus all this meat.
Gee.
Wow, we're not done with that. Okay, cool. All right,
So
go.
the word meat comes from the Old English word meat or mete,
Mete, met.
which referred to food in general.
Okay.
The term is related to mad in the Danish, mat in Swedish and Norwegian, and mat and farusi, which also means food. So the word exists in old languages to denote food, important food, and animal feed. So there was a point in time when anything that wasn't sweets or something for animals was just called meat, or
Mm.
the closest word to it.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
And then most meat refers to skeletal muscle and associated fat and other tissues, but may also describe other edible tissues such as offal. Meat is sometimes used in the flesh of mammalian species.
Like we were saying
Yeah,
earlier, pigs and cows.
to the
Okay.
exclusion of fish and other animals. But in context of food, meat can refer to the edible part of something distinguished from its covering. Hence, you could say the fruit, there's the meat, and
Yeah.
there's the skin.
Mm. Yes. That's how
Mm.
great English is.
So we have this quick list wherein the meat of a pig, meat of cattle is known as beef, the meat of sheep is known as mutton, then the meat of calves is veal, and the meat of deer is venison.
Mm. Okay. Okay. And it's interesting that it's generically cattle because it's not just cows. So I guess there are a lot of things that could be beef.
Such
Bison beef.
as
Because they're
I was thinking Kobe.
Kobe beef, which is still a cow.
I know, but it was other things other than Kobe. Wait, no.
Have you ever had deer?
I don't think so.
Do you want to try it? Because like people always describe it as being potent. If it's not like fresh or prepared or cleaned well, it's quote unquote gamey.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been in the chance to try it. I'm just so. Hmm. So does cattle also include goat?
I think so. You want to click it? What does it?
So is it goat beef?
They define it as large, domesticated, cloven hooved herbivores. So I guess goats don't count. Livestock for meat, beef or veal, see beef cattle, milk, and the rest. So what do they include as other cattle? See,
Or I
it's
guess they
like
just
you no, you're rocking a Zubron.
yeah, aurochs and like so
Okay, okay. So cow shaped things.
yaks, bison, buffalo.
Hindi large ang goat, depending
Oh
on
my
the
god,
goat.
there's a hybrid called beefalo.
Beefalo.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god.
Beefalo are fertile hybrid offspring of domestic cattle used in breeding programs and the American bison.
Oh wow.
So they're primarily bred for the meat production.
Okay. Okay.
That disturbs me.
Okay. Hey, hey.
This is a
That's
very
genetically modifying things because you're making animals that wouldn't normally do it. Do it. Okay. Oh, I feel like we had a conversation about favorite meat, but okay, I guess we should kind of wander into that. But given that meat spans both what we tend to call red meat, which is
mhm,
like uh, cow and pig, but then do
not
you,
necessarily Russian
yeah.
red meat.
But since it also includes fish and other animals,
Hmm.
do you what is a what meat category do you most gravitate towards? Like if you didn't have to cook yourself, what would you choose?
I guess when I was younger, I was really more beef than pork.
Okay.
I like beef. Um, I was always annoyed with the oiliness of pork.
Mm, mm.
Um, but then as I got older, I kind of realized that I like how in pork you can, I guess you can say, if it feels too fatty, you can start not eating that part and focus just on the meat because it's all meat. But in terms of pork, because the marbling and all that, the meat and the fat is all together, right?
Okay.
So
Yes.
so so it's like eating ice cream with two flavors separate, or eating like swirled ice cream and you don't have a choice, right?
I guess that's a good analogy. Let's use ice cream.
To
Okay.
talk about me.
Um, okay, but that's in terms of eating. How
Mm.
about now that you've been cooking for some time since we've been living together? Is there a meat you prefer to work with to cook? Because there's a difference. There's a world of difference between
Well,
the different
Since
ones.
I stick to just frying or roasting, baking, um, it doesn't feel that different
Okay.
because I don't go through making stews and soups, which you do,
Okay.
which has that pork smells weird when you're boiling it, and then
Yes.
you have to collect the scum out, and I can't handle that. It it makes me feel like I won't eat afterwards.
There are parts of the cooking process that make you wonder why do you do this?
Mark Poa shares, why isn't there beef ice cream?
Because Toby doesn't get his way.
Mitch also shares, beef digests longer than pork.
It's harder to digest. It's
Mhm.
more complex as a protein. Okay. All right. And then for me, like growing up, I always liked chicken. Like I don't know. And then, but admittedly, there was the convenience of whenever it was like filleted.
Mhm.
Like chicken was always like you think about cutlets, nuggets,
Mhm.
uh, the the chicken patties and McDonald's, all these things. It's like oh, it's like so convenient, and then such a clean. I mean, admittedly, a clean flavor and not as
Mhm.
oily. And then growing up, I did not eat the fat on pork, and I would literally like if I would eat sinigang, I would have leftover this mound of fatty bits
Mhm.
that I had cut away. So it's just
Mhm.
so funny now. Like, oh, now I eat it, but okay. Um, but yeah, on the cooking front, oh, you know what? I guess to some degree, chicken is still easier to work with. And we buy quarters, and I chop them down for
But you
tinola.
don't debone them,
No,
and
no,
that's why it's
I mean none of these things are easy
yeah.
to deal with on a deboning
But
level.
there are dishes wherein you have to debone the chicken, and I
Yeah.
know that's like always the hassle in cooking shows. That's always the panic because I cut it apart when you could be able to debone it without breaking the chicken form. Mark shares only recently he has a weird aversion to pork in soup, but not
That's
roasted pork.
interesting. Why is it a texture problem, Mark, or a because I guess in theory the flavor really depends on what the meal is, but is it just texture?
And then Mitch shares not fond of drumstick. I used to
Why?
be part of the drumstick is king market, but then I had my chicken story.
I surrendered because my sister was older than me
Mm-mm.
and queen of the drumstick department. So then I learned to appreciate other parts of the chicken.
Is the word cutlet because there's also fillet, but it's filet, so should it be calais?
I don't know where this question comes from. Sige, go look it up. The etymology of cutlet. Okay. So Mark says maybe because of it could be because he thinks of you feel like the fat in the soup is more rubbery.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I do feel like if you boil it down enough though, it's like not so bad. Okay, but hey, we have a lot of weird food things.
Okay, they're very different.
Okay, Toby, what did you just learn about cutlet and fillet?
So fillet or fillet
Okay, pause. Why do you say fillet? Explain to
de-
the group.
depends on what show we're watching.
Explain to the group why you say fillet.
Depends on the show we are watching.
And what's the
It's
what's
the
the
same as okra
what's the primary
and
show?
okra.
What's the primary show we blame for all of this? Because the way you say cutlet, okra, rocket, they're all the same show. What is that show?
Junior Master stuff.
Junior Master Chef Australia. We watched ever since we watched that for the very first time. Toby has not gone away from saying fillet, cutlet, and rocket. Okay, so what did you learn about
What should it be if not rocket?
arugula?
Okay, so fillet or fillet is from the Latin word filum or thread.
Okay,
So it's basically parang you're threading it. Cutlet, which is basically means a choice of meat, is from the French word côtelette, I presume,
okay.
which is little rib.
Why did you give me rib? to go with your fillet.
So yeah, so
So very different etymology.
yeah,
Okay,
different languages
I
altogether.
am glad that we have
Because
resolved
for a
this.
moment I was thinking like it was like fillet,
I'm glad that we've resolved
and
this
then
question.
cutlet was like cattle, and then let. But then I realized that was piglet. I was thinking of the piglet and cutlet didn't connect. Never mind. Anyway, going back, meats.
Yes, people like are interrogating you about these things. This has become a regular
A meat
segment.
I don't think I ever want to try is whale or dolphin.
Dolphin, 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 dolphin.
It
Okay,
it
yeah.
it doesn't,
How come?
because I do believe like dog they're smart. But
Okay.
then again, some would say all animals are.
They
So
say
it's
pigs are very smart.
I've seen proof of that. So it's kind of tricky.
Still ate them though.
Yeah, chickens are smart. Chickens are vengeful.
Why
Yeah,
are you saying this
they
way?
remember and then they hold grudges. Um, but yeah, but I guess for me, whales and dolphins because they feel closer to human in
And we
some
only
degree.
bring it up because there's a section on the meat article that mentions like other meat that people tend to
Mm-mm.
eat around the world. Okay. Um oh my god, I'm not gonna repeat that, Mark. Okay, I know that. Okay, it's a weird joke. Okay, um so given all this though, okay, but then just there's the meat industry though gets a lot of has gotten a lot of bad press
Mm-hmm.
in recent years. There's like a lot of reasons not to
Mm-hmm.
support meat. I mean, like there was already people like who would become vegetarian or vegan for on the principle of not wanting to
Yes.
harm animals,
Yes.
which it's a
Not wanting to harm other living intelligent beings,
okay, yes, which
because plants don't count.
unless you're a
Although you know,
there was like a
it's
fruitarian.
always that tricky thing because there are some that say plants also have shown intelligence to some degree. Um,
Yeah, I
th-
forget. I forget if it was real or not. That there are people who only eat fruit that have fallen from the tree or
yeah, and
something.
then there's the intelligence that has been noticed to be present in the super colonies, wherein you have trees all interconnected in the root system,
Mm-mm.
and they all have this shared information and all that. But going back, the ethics of meat eating ranges everything from the moral issues. Some have more religious viewpoints about it. Some meats are not clean. Um,
Or some meats are too holy to eat.
yeah, there are those that see the act of eating meat as part of the larger problem that the world is facing because the food industry and all the farts is one of those issues, right? You remember reading that
Yeah, yeah.
now with all these animals.
They contribute to climate. Well, I think, and their contribution to climate change is, I think, not just the farts, although the
Mhm.
methane production is significant,
Yeah.
but also the conversion of land
Yes.
for domesticated animals.
Yes.
Then you lose forests and other things that would help protect us more. So there's like a lot of reasons to not go for meat. And admittedly, I tried to get us like halfway into that segment when I was
Mm.
like embracing corn
Yes.
because, well, to be fair, it started with corn became our client, and so I was super fascinated by
Hmm.
it as a meat alternative product. And then um, it was very expensive. I must admit, a lot of these meat alternatives are very, very expensive, and so
Mm-mm.
it's not economically viable for a lot of people to just give up meat eating. At least not the way that the current food industry is geared towards.
Mm-hmm.
And then and it was okay, but then it's always like that weird like what's this? Do I really what do you call this? Do I really want to pretend I'm eating meat by eating something else, or should I just
Mm.
learn to eat other things? Which is
Yes.
it's a whole different because the counter argument against things like corn and Impossible Burgers and whatnot is that it's very processed.
Mm-mm.
It's like very very processed food stuff that also the cost there is still a lot of cost of production in terms of water
Mm.
consumption and energy consumption. So I mean like it's hard to like win and find a perfect food apart from I guess growing your own.
I can't help but feel that a lot of the problems are being thrown towards the consumer side. We're eating food, we're eating this and that. But the real source of the problem is the capitalist side. How they're preparing the processed meats, how they're attacking the land to create more farmland.
Industrialization.
Um, this always brings me back to that cartoon wherein you have people going, I'll save the world, I'll stop using straws, and then you have the fish going, what about the nets, the nets, and they're like, the straws are gone, I have saved the ocean, but then the fish are like, no, the nets, because you know
I remember this.
the fact is there are like tons of those plastic netting left in the seas, and even if we do have a significant amount of generated garbage, that's still nothing compared to the amounts that these industries leave behind.
Ooh, Mark Poa brings up the two times he remembers meat consumption discussed in science fiction. One being, I remember this, Douglas Adams in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
Mm-hmm.
where he says that the cow was meant to be eaten because it was bred to solve the ethical dilemma of slaughtering an animal unwillingly for meat. Because cows they're just kind of there and they walk into the
Mm-hmm.
slaughterhouse and all these things. Um,
Pierce Anthony also talks about how it takes more resources to produce a kilo of beef compared to a kilo of
Yeah,
lettuce.
so there's also a lot of problems with just like large scale
Mm-hmm.
farming and all. I mean, so there are consequences everywhere. And then it's also just like, so that's why I always feel like you said that like it's also balanced against all this burden to the consumer
Mm-hmm.
to figure out how to to solve the problems of the world when it's really a problem at the level of governments, big corporations, and things. I mean, like in terms
Prop
of contribution.
Because if there were more attention to how production and generation matched demand and distribution, then there would be less of this problem. I mean, even when it comes to water, we have this similar. There's that statement wherein I forgot the actual value, but when you ask someone how much water do you think you use in a year, and that person might give this amount, but then they're forgetting the around 10 times more that you don't count because that's not what you consume, that's not what you bathe in or wash
Mm.
with, but that's how much water is needed to breed the meat that you will eat, to water the plants that you will get, to convert the and this and that then power the machines that allow vehicles to deliver it to you, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, yeah. So
And
there's a huge chain of
yeah,
things, and makes me want to watch that old Discovery Channel show, Connections.
but
Okay.
in the end, all the hurrah keeps targeting people, which does make you sometimes wonder how much of it is funded to force the blame at you and not call for changes in the larger scale.
Okay. So, have you ever considered like going full vegetarian or vegan or anything like that?
Um, okay, thanks for joining us, Mark.
Night, Mark.
Um, no, not that I gave it much thought.
Okay.
Um, Admittedly, I've kind of fallen under this area of I'll eat what I can enjoy. But if it's not something I can get, then that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, do I see myself turning vegan or vegetarian anytime soon? Not really.
Okay.
Um, and I think a large part of that is only because I don't think I'll have the patience to try to understand what counts, what doesn't, and what alternatives I should use.
Okay.
So, I think that's my simplest answer.
Yeah. I mean, like, so I was like half in, half out with us and like introducing corn. And
Mhm.
I figured that we wouldn't go away from meat entirely, but maybe we could reduce our meat consumption. So
Mhm.
it's like to balance things out. But then I went keto. And then a lot of the meat alternatives
Yes.
are very high in carbs and fillers and other extenders. So then I couldn't eat
Mhm.
them. So then I've gone like, so then I've gone
Flip back.
a lot more meat.
Yeah.
But to be fair, is that my vegetable consumption is very high now.
Mhm.
Like I'm eating more greens now than ever before
Mhm.
to kind of balance things out. So as much as and then like recently I've been doing a lot of like, hey, this pasta doesn't have any meat in it. Then
Mhm.
I'm just using
Yeah,
mushrooms
and those are
or
pretty good.
tofu. Yeah. So that's like me
Unless you
trying
count
to
mushrooms as meat.
Why?
because it has the fleshy meat.
But okay, we defined it from animals. Are you saying the mushrooms are animals?
No, remember, meat also counts any fleshy material other than the skin.
From the animal.
Not yet.
Yes, it was
That's why the
because
fruit has the meat.
it was in the it doesn't meet the definition of meat. It is just the language usage of it. It was a different paragraph.
Mitch shares that she cannot give up meat. If I could marry pork barbecue, I will. Um, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the story behind our corn consumption before. So
So
now like we're not on any meat alternatives, but I'm like balancing with like, hey, let's use mushrooms. Hey, let's use more tofu. And that's mainly because was this the kind of core principle of like things like keto and paleo is like eating food that is recognizable. It's like
mm,
so it's also a shift away from processed meat as much as possible. Um, so that's like become my balancing act to like okay, we'll not always like use beef and pork and chicken all the time.
there's this website. I'm not sure of the title, but it's a UK website that
Okay,
offers a list of how to get protein without the meat.
because that's how we most associate meat as a key source of protein.
Yeah.
Okay,
So there's the number one on the list is
what
pulses.
is pulses?
They are an inexpensive protein choice, high in fiber and a source of iron. They're part of the legume family
Oh, they're not
and
keto.
include all beans, peas, and lentils. So that's that.
Oh, Kenny quickly shares he can only go pescatarian at max, which is don't eat land animals, so they can still eat fish. I remember also like Manuel was like pescatarian for a long time, and
Mm,
then Mitch recently you're having a good steak once a month using the Gordon Ramsay recipe cooking style. Ooh, that's nice. And Mitch just noticed how meaty our shirts are.
yes,
Thank
course.
you.
Number
Proud of the
two is
girl.
soya beans. Unlike other pulses, soya beans are a complete protein, comparable in quality and animal protein, but they are low in fat and contain more iron and fiber.
So it's interesting how yeah, like soy has like so many forms, whether you're eating edamame or it's
Mm-mm.
tofu or it's I don't know the beans themselves
Yeah.
somewhere in a cooked form,
Mm-mm.
um, or bean curd skin. Oh my god, like every time I think about it, I miss bean curd skin. So good job tofu in all your diverse forms. You're a fun source of protein.
Mm-mm. So tofu is like animal-less meat.
Okay,
Number three is quinoa. Cooked
man.
and eaten like a grain, but actually a seed of a green vegetable related to chard and spinach. It's a good protein food, but also not the amount that is impressive. Unlike cereal, it has all the essential amino acids you'll find in animal protein.
I would love to get more into quinoa if it weren't so freaking expensive. It's like, oh my god.
Well, with a name like quinoa, I guess they can like up the price.
I think it's also because it's not in terms of like the production cycle and the
Mm,
fact that you're eating something seeds,
yeah,
then you're cutting it off early, so it
true.
stymies your growth.
Number four is
Oh,
nuts.
last week's topic.
So they're packed with fiber, protein, and are high in fat, hence the calories. And quickly moving to number five is seeds. Unlike nuts, seeds contain healthy saturated fats and proteins, can serve as a snack. Six, of course, is cereal and grains.
We know that yeah, eat rice.
Seven is corn.
Oh my god, this is definitely a UK thing. If corn is on the list.
So corn is made from an edible fungus and has a meat-like texture.
It's so funny how they can't even say mushrooms. It's like it's an edible fungus. It's like mushrooms, but it's not mushrooms.
Eight is dairy.
But just still like okay. And this is like the tricky thing which delineates vegetarians from vegans is things
Mhm,
like milk and eggs.
mhm,
Whenever they come up as alternatives, like they're still animal derived,
mhm.
so that becomes the challenge for some. But then others, it's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. Quinoa is an acquired taste, says Mitch. Oh yeah, and then it gets every like after. Remember, I used to have quinoa from Mina and stuff, and
Yeah.
then after we eat, you brush your teeth, and then there's so much quinoa still in your mouth. Strange.
Mm-mm. Number 10 is fish.
What is with this list? Okay, fish is meat still, but it's different. But because Because just going pescatarian though is not a perfect solution in itself because we're also dealing with fixed quantities of fish and
Mhm.
the challenges of overfishing in our oceans and there I think you can only answer with like moderation is key.
Yeah, I think that ultimately is the answer for everything. I mean, even when it comes to dieting, when it comes to eating, when it comes to drinking, going out, when it comes to spending on things you love, when it comes to traveling, when it comes to taking risks, the bottom line, the answer is always moderation is key.
Yeah.
Do what's safe, but still don't bore yourself to not doing it.
And don't indulge in just one thing
Yes.
or isolate yourself only to one
And
thing.
unfortunately, when it comes to the production side of things, as far as capitalism is concerned,
They want
there's
you to
no
go
such
all
thing.
in.
And there's no such thing as moderation.
Yeah, yeah.
If they can like collect 10 tons, they'll collect 10 tons, even if the the market is only needing 2 tons. Because with those 8 extra tons, then they're gonna look at maybe we can now ship to here and here and here and
Or we convince people to eat more meat with the marketing campaign, and now you're playing food chain magnate,
yes.
which we haven't actually played. Okay. All right. Ooh, you got more trivia things.
So in the site mymeetup.org, which is not a dating site,
MEAT, but then I think you could still make a dating site
I
with that
know the
word.
name is a good
My
dating
meetup.
site.
But it's .org, so that
Tagalog.
means
Dapat
it's not a
dapat
commercial venture.
Filipino, MAY, my meetup. Anyway, kasi pwedeng may carding nakatayo. MyMeetup.org says, 1. Meat is a complete high-quality protein containing all the essential amino acids that you need for your optimal health.
Okay.
Second is that it provides more protein per serving than dairy, eggs, legumes, vegetables, and nuts, and so on and so
Which
forth.
are all like the alternatives that are
But of
providing.
course, they didn't mention other stuff that do beat it, like tofu and the like. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Tables used to just highlight your focus. 3, meat is the natural source.
Is the natural source, all caps,
So
of B12.
I always question the word natural because they try to cast dirty looks on other things that have some level of processing or some level of GMO is bad. But the fact is, we do cultivate and
And if you look
evolve
at
our food.
the way that farms are handled like factories from a
Mhm,
production perspective, it's kind of scary.
mhm.
Oh, Mitch shares enjoyed something called Hida beef. It's a wagyu in the Gifu region. Oh, I am not familiar. We'll look it up.
4, it claims consuming meat may help you manage and lose weight.
I think as long as it's not to excess, yes.
5, meat is essential in nutrients.
Rich in essentials.
Yeah.
Okay.
6, convenient processed meats like sausages, etc., are packed with vitamins and minerals, including, okay, this is starting to sound like a
And suit your
sponsor.
busy lifestyle. Okay.
Meat is a superfood. Okay, I think that tells me this article was crap.
It was created by the North American Meat Institute. So it's definitely supporting big beef.
I think I liked it more when I thought it was a hookup site.
Okay.
So, um, given all the discussions that we've had currently on meat, and given the frustrations of living in a society that approaches meat in this manner, do you foresee any major changes down the line? I mean, there was a time when um, I dare say it was simpler, wherein there's pork, there's beef, there's the other meats, and that's it. And with the progression of time, we have the progression of ideas and um, views on ethics, and now we have all these alternatives cropping up. Many of them still super expensive, others cheaper, but so far from what they promise. There was like, it tastes like real meat, and then you bite it, it's cardboard.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. This is the Trekkie in me. But then the reason why one of the big reasons why the Federation is this utopian
mhm,
society is that they eliminated basic needs with the innovation of things like replicators.
mhm,
So replicators in Star Trek use like fundamental materials and turn them into other things and they create food or devices or
mhm,
stuff so you no longer want things because your replicator creates it.
Hmm.
And as much as there's also like the in-universe joke of like replicator food never tastes quite the same
Hmm.
as like real food, but then I feel like sciencey food is the way to go. Like whether it is going to be these mushroom people or whatnot, whether it's the efforts to 3D print food,
Yeah, I'm thinking 3D printing.
3D printing food, which is practically a replicator approach. I think that's it. It's like as long as we are able to get our nutrients in a manner that is not boring, that
Mhm.
continues to taste good and delight people, then I totally think that we won't have to be dependent on the meat industry or any large scale farming
Mhm.
and domesticated animals, which may be interesting.
Yeah, I feel the magic bullet will really come from if they not just match flavor, but keep the costs low.
Yeah, that's the
Once
other thing.
once those two are hit, people won't care where it comes from.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
the fact that there are a lot of snacks and breakfast cereals and all this and that, which we don't really know what they're made of,
that's true.
but people buy it because they're yummy and stuff. Um, as much as the meat industry will try to push, yeah, but it's not real burgers and blah blah blah. But then if you get a meat substitute that does taste like bacon and doesn't cost you 4 times the cost of bacon,
Yeah, that's the problem
I
with the
don't think
current
people
roster
will
of plant-based
mind,
burgers.
right?
Yeah,
Because the
yeah,
only reason people are always stressed out about buying actual meat and all this and that is because the alternatives just don't taste the same, or the alternatives are just too expensive.
mm, mm.
But just as we've noticed how people will eat steak the way they want, meaning Bert,
Wow, wow.
it doesn't matter what the right way to eat the food is. It's going to always be a matter of convenience and therefore cost and taste.
And we live in a country like the Philippines, which is
Hmm.
obviously a lot of people live um, with a lot less access to resources, and
Hmm.
so the cost of food is very vital to figuring things out. And so you can't just keep saying that, hey, you got to reduce your carbon footprint by not eating meat, but then people can't afford the alternatives, or they can't
Yes.
afford to not have that protein source. Then
Yes.
then what do you do, right?
I'd
So
even bring up how, you have a lot of this um, um, excitement in the rest of the world on how tofu is so flexible and can be used this and that, etc., etc. Countries in Southeast Asia have been using tofu as substitutes to meat and rice for God knows how long.
because we've had a large segment of the population who are vegetarian for religious
Yeah,
reasons.
and beyond that, it's also something readily accessible in terms of cost,
Mm, mm.
right?
Yeah, tofu is quite
And
affordable.
compared to, let's say, in the States, wherein if you buy tofu, it's like super expensive.
Mm-mm.
So um, we're now living in a world where you have non-salt salt. There was that episode we watched wherein they found that way to get the salt moment without using actual salt.
In the same way that there's non-sugar sugar.
Yeah, and given those advancements, we do have edible 3D printing already happening,
Yeah,
just not in large scales.
which is like that's why I like as much as it's not necessarily keto and the costs are high, but in terms of like what things like corn and Impossible Meat or Beyond
Mm.
whatever. I mean, I always forget the brands, but they've achieved some brilliant things. Like those nuggets do taste or do
Mm.
have the texture of like a chicken nugget.
Yeah,
So we know that the science in principle is there. It's just a question of getting it to a scale where it becomes more cost acceptable.
and there is the factor that people's tastes do shift. Um, with everyone trying to do the alternative burger or the alternative bacon, everyone is trying to make it feel like bacon or feel
Mm-mm.
like a ground beef burger. But I feel that's the wrong way to go
You think it just has to be its own thing?
because chicken nugget is nothing like chicken,
It's its own
but
thing.
people have embraced chicken nuggets now.
And even with the revelations that chicken nuggets are derived from the pink slime
Yep,
meat goo.
which still does use chicken stuff and all that, but the
in a
fact
form
is,
that is unrecognizable as
yeah,
chicken.
it still makes you think chicken. It still has the flavor profile. It doesn't have the same texture at all,
Yeah, yeah.
but you
It's
still already have gained that association. So I feel if they just focus on cost and flavor, and then they start marketing it, maybe we'll have burger balls, or maybe we'll
yeah.
have steak rods or something. And
And I totally agree in the sense that it's like with me and keto and like at was just a lot of people complain about the costs of the keto diet
mm,
because they look at the costs of keto alternatives to things that the
yes.
desserts, the pastries, the whatever, the rice.
Mm-mm.
Um, when ultimately you would just like it was just like me after my first few months of keto, then like screw it, it's like let's stop worrying about and saving up for the alternatives and just eat other things that I
Yeah.
can eat. And then so it just became more regular vegetables and
Mm-mm.
more more tofu and all these things. Then it kind of made sense. So yeah, I think in the same way that a lot the whole meat alternative industry, everybody keeps attacking it with we need to simulate
Mm-mm.
how people are eating meat today because they're not going to accept it otherwise. So it has to be a burger, it has to be, and we tried their burgers, sausages,
Mm-mm.
breakfast, the breakfast sausages.
And
It's fascinating.
we're all forgetting how this still all harkens back to the very first thing that they've learned to market and sell to us, which not looks nothing like the original. French fries.
French fries, pommes.
Diba? French fries for the longest time did not look like chips. Did not look like sliced potato. But we loved it.
And they're super processed.
Mhm.
They're super processed. So yeah, it's a
So we're
thing.
not saying that all food will have to be processed, but we are saying the best way that the alternative food industry will succeed is by, you know, not being afraid anymore of being different, but still tasting as good and being cheaper.
Mm.
And I think that's the way to go for the future if you want, whether it's a meatless society or an alternative meat society.
Yeah, because I think that, and I think we're never going to fully go away from like actual animal meat consumption,
Mhm.
but I think we do need to come to a point where we have enough alternatives so that we're not beholden to like all this farmland
Yes.
dedicated to things, and we can go back to reinforcing green spaces, making more forests and whatnot,
Hmm.
and all these
I
things.
guess for me to close,
The future
what
of meat is
would
not
you
meat.
do you see would you see this as a good society in the future if everything was alternatives and that was the norm, that was the normal cost, and then everything actual animal was premium cost?
I wouldn't mind. I think this is the way we're gonna go. I just hope that it's not like I don't like the route that some people are going with, like the people who do Soylent,
Hmm.
which was the nutrient drink. So they don't eat solid food anymore. They just
Hmm.
drink their thing.
Hmm.
I hope it's not on that route, or that we go to like sad science fiction, like you get the yellow paste or the green paste. It's like right there's all these weird sci-fi depictions of meat food in the future, and then I eat a pill and that's all I
Hmm.
get. So I think eating should still be a delightful experience.
Hmm.
And I do think that we're gonna shift to alternatives, quote unquote, to what versus what we're doing today that may
Hmm.
become the norm, because if they're cost effective, just as tasty, um, and maybe they'll come up with completely different flavor experiences, then I think that could work, and I think that's like good for long term sustainability. And we may have to change our definition for meat based on how they use these things in the future.
Hmm.
But there just needs to be that push, that impetus to do so, because right now it's like it's easier to just stick to what they know and to continue as they are. But it's definitely not like sustainable in the long term,
Hmm.
because we're dealing with a finite amount of space on this planet, a growing human
Hmm.
population, and a growing demand for food. So something's got to give. Okay, that's how I feel. Wow, this is the food episode that doesn't leave you hungry. Anything else, Toby?
I think that's it. I think we've covered everything. We're very grateful for everyone who joined us for this episode. I know it got kind of weird and sci-fi in the end, but that's because we're geeks. But we
Think
hope you
about the
enjoyed. We
future.
hope you enjoyed this episode because we did, and we'll hope you'll join us again next time.
For questions or suggestions for future episodes, fill up the Google form at bit.ly Baduy Pride Ideas. This week is still M week, and we are really gonna see how far this goes. It's all M topics,
Not
uh,
sponsored by McDonald's.
or the letter M apparently, if letters could sponsor things. You can follow us on Twitter, Altobi No Shade, RG Suniko.
You can also check out our blog, badaypride.com, for all the previous episodes and stuff about it.
We don't have an episode tomorrow, but we will be back on Thursday. But for now, be sure to continue the conversation in the comments below. What are your meat stories? Or more excitingly, what is your version of the future of food? Like, how are we going to maintain meat but live a life that is
And
sustainable?
will people still call it Phillips?
Toby will. All right. And then be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Once again, I'm Rocky.
And I'm Toby.
And
And
this
this
is
is
Baduy
Baduy
Pride.
Pride.
Good night, everyone.